Paul Biya and Emmanuel Macron meet in a tete-a-tete on the sidelines of the replenishment conference of the Global Fund for AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria that ended in the French city of Lyon today. The 6th replenishment conference of the Global Fund ends in Lyon, France, with donors hitting the $14 billion target, including 3 billion CFA francs from Cameroon alone. The indomitable Lions of Cameroon look forward to clashing with the Carthage Eagles of Tunisia in an international friendly on Saturday, without Chupo, Ngamale and Bong all ruled out for minor injuries. And those are our lead stories. Hello, thanks for joining us. I am Ben Menopofong and this is the 7:30 News. President Paul Biya says Cameroon has made a financial contribution of 3 billion CFA francs to the Global Fund for AIDS, Malaria and Tuberculosis. The Cameroonian leader was speaking in Lyon, France today after talks with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. As CRTV's special envoy to Lyon, Theodore Atunenti, reports, the 45-minute tete-a-tete was holding on the sidelines of the replenishment conference of the Global Fund that wrapped up today.
It was a major man-to-man between President Paul Biya and Emmanuel Macron here at the Salle Gratte-Ciel on the second floor in the Congress Center. The rumor has been going around within diplomatic circles in the last couple of days, but no one knew the time or the place, and this Thursday it happened. For about 45 minutes, President Macron, assisted by his Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Jean-Yves Le Drian, and his Cameroonian counterpart Paul Biya were able to review a wide range of multilateral and bilateral questions. That they came out hand in hand with the familiar hug between the two leaders, and then, of course, the First Lady, it was evident that there was an accord parfait on the issues discussed. But up to this point, the media was in the dark. President Paul Biya was soon to volunteer information on the substance of their conversation, which included no less than 6 talking points, such as defense and security, especially their mutual commitment in the fight against terrorism and providing safe haven for refugees from neighboring countries. Mr. Macron pledged to continue to support Cameroon in these domains.
J'ai eu un entretien avec le président Macron. Nous avons évoqué évidemment les problèmes.
With President Macron, we discussed issues concerning the Global Fund, the fight against tuberculosis, malaria and AIDS. We also discussed cooperation issues.
Il m'a demandé comment c'est déroulé.
He asked me how the major national dialogue went, and I briefed him. Then we reviewed the relations between our two countries to note that they are good.
Un tour d'horizon de la coopération entre les deux pays. Nous avons contribué.
We have contributed to the tune of 3 billion francs CFA to the Global Fund, since we also benefit from this fund in the fight against these epidemics.
De l'argent du Fonds mondial.
Upon this briefing, President Macron congratulated President Paul Biya on the successful organization of the major national dialogue. He appreciated President Paul Biya's commitment to implement the resolutions that emanated from that dialogue. He said the recent magnanimous gestures made by President Paul Biya to thaw the socio-political ice in the country are most lauded within international circles, and France supports him for that. In the audience, President Macron pleaded with President Paul Biya in his capacity as chairman of CEMAC to look at the possibility of convening a summit of this body in the perspective of discussing the fate of the CFA franc and the features of CEMAC and ECAS. After this review, a consensus emerged between the two leaders that relations between Paris and Yaoundé remain solid and their views on major issues convergent. Asho Nienti on national assignment, Lyon, France.
And so the 6th replenishment conference of the Global Fund has ended in the French city of Lyon, with donors meeting the 14 billion US dollar target that it set out to reach. The amount will be used in the next 3 years to lead the fight against HIV/AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis. CRTV's special envoy Theodore Ashunianti reports on Cameroon's participation in the deliberations.
Just as on day one of the conference, President Paul Biya is present on this second and final day of deliberations of the Global Fund's 6th Replenishment Conference, still with the First Lady Chantal Biya by his side, always with the same keen interest, listening to every detail and internally weighing his options. The overall intentions have not changed. Raise 14 billion US dollars that will be used to assist countries like Cameroon over the next 3 years in the eradication of the epidemics of AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. In this conference, the mobilization has been incredible. Donors have been quite generous. French President Emmanuel Macron, in the robes of fundraiser-in-chief, used open diplomacy and subtle pressures to get donors to empty their purses. He threatened, but jokingly, that he would close all the doors. Nobody was to leave until the full amount is collected. And when the gavel dropped, 14 billion US dollars was in the bag, 2 times the current budget of Cameroon, just the amount that was targeted. Cameroon contributed 3 billion francs CFA. The French President Emmanuel Macron, who joined his African peers on this final day, captured the urgency of the moment and the stakes involved when he said that the largesse of the donor community should not be considered as mere charity. It should rather be considered as a duty, an obligation that must decisively pull down the walls of inequality, stigmatization and prejudice against victims of AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. President Macron specifically singled out Cameroon for praise as one of the countries that has got it right in the fight against these illnesses. Mr. Macron discussed it with President Paul Biya in the closed-door dinner and repeated it in this Thursday's plenary session, the desire of France to help Cameroon build a more robust investment base for health. Here is a President Paul Biya, convinced of the power of his entreaties and satisfied with the potency of his corridor diplomacy, leaving the conference venue, having ensured that Cameroon was not only present, but made a significant contribution to the outcome of the conference. Ashu Nienti on national assignment, Lyon, France.
Tomorrow is October 11, a day that will be observed across the globe as the International Day of the Girl Child. And ahead of that day, Plan Cameroon is carrying out an initiative known as Girls Takeover. And the exercise consists in showing how young girls assume leadership roles in big enterprises for a couple of minutes. Here at the Cameroon Radio Television, 15-year-old Hapsatu Zakari played the role of the Director General of the CRTV for 15 minutes, and with Charles Ndongo and his collaborators, she discussed issues related to the empowerment of the girl child in Cameroon. Rainatu Saleh watched how it all played out.
It is 10 a.m. and Hapsatu Zakari, the Director General of the CRTV, makes her way in. She is accompanied to her office by her bodyguard. Upon arrival, she is welcomed by Charles Ndongo, then shown to her seat. She then makes a call and demands to have a working session with her close collaborators, who answer a few minutes later. The directors give her the agenda of the day. Moments later, another director walks in, but he is late and Hapsatu reproaches him for that. The one-day Director General of the CRTV dishes out instructions to her collaborators and off they go. The 15-year-old, who assumes the role of the Director General of the CRTV, is curious to know how Charles Ndongo manages the state broadcaster and if gender equality is being promoted.
We are doing our best to show the best images of the women and promote the gender equity.
The initiative, known as Girls Take Over by Plan Cameroon, is to encourage girls to assume positions of power for a couple of minutes. The objective: empower girls to develop leadership skills and help close the gap between what a girl is capable of and what she is allowed to do. The activity is in prelude to the International Day of the Girl that will see hundreds of girls in over 60 countries lead a historic takeover of positions of power.
We now open our explanatory special page on the resolutions of the just ended major national dialogue in Cameroon. And the shadow of that major national dialogue is gradually fading away, but the footprints are still very present, with some major achievements recorded concerning some proposals made in Commission Number 4 that had to do with the return of refugees and IDPs to their respective homes. Our reporter Caroline Oke-Anoma now examines some of the major recommendations that came out of that commission and now explains how IDPs and refugees can be brought back to their original settlements.
With the presence of a handful of men of God and His Eminence Cardinal Christian Tomi at the helm of the commission charged with how to facilitate the reinsertion of refugees and IDPs, one could easily conclude that the presence of God was in this commission.
I want inclusive dialogue so that my brothers and sisters that will have run to bushes, they will come back.
Encourage people to go back home, and those who are outside to come in, there should be amnesty.
And at the close of the major national dialogue,
those whose houses were destroyed should be rebuilt by the government.
We also spoke of facilities which they will get when they come back, enabling kits to be provided to them.
One of the major points proposed by almost all the commissions was on the liberation of some of the political prisoners. And as we all know, the president has already released 333 political prisoners. Almost all the propositions will be progressively put into practice.
Other achievements include plans for the construction of decent homes for the IDPs, schools, health facilities, setting up communication channels for the deployment of the army and free movement of people, the provision of resettlement and integration kits to refugees and IDPs, as well as proceed to the physical headcount of all displaced persons in order to come up with an estimate of their basic socioeconomic needs, were some of the major achievements at the major national dialogue.
Blending the effort of the diaspora and those of the administration to build a strong and prosperous Cameroon is one of the things that came under review during the major national dialogue that held last week here in Yaoundé. The commission that treated issues hinging on the diaspora recommended, amongst other things, the inception of dual citizenship to Cameroonians, as well as the creation of a ministry for diaspora. Christian Che Atam has been revisiting some of these recommendations and posits that the diaspora represents a non-negligible force which, if well managed, can be a major trump card for Cameroon's economic takeoff.
Leaving one's country to seek better opportunities abroad is not a crime. It is the legitimate right of every citizen to exploit their potential to the fullest, no matter where this might take them. The important question for every conscientious citizen is to know how they can contribute to the development of their homeland. And this will depend largely on the mechanism put in place to facilitate the participation of the diaspora. The recommendations of the major national dialogue are clear.
Cameroon have to agree on that dual citizenship for the diaspora. Another very important part is that Cameroon have to have a minister that specially dedicated to the diaspora.
Cameroon has a huge community abroad, and for many decades now, this diaspora has been a major source of income for hundreds of thousands of families in the country, but also for the state. A better organization of this mass can ensure an even bigger contribution from the diaspora.
The adoption of the principle of parliamentary and governmental representation of the diaspora. The establishment of a diaspora one-stop shop, in brackets guichet unique, to facilitate administrative procedures for investment and business creation within the embassies.
There is no place like home, says the artist. If you go south, west, east and north, you will always come back home. Up to the administration to make home attractive enough for those who have known other cultures and other experiences and who just want to come back home.
And Cameroonians living in Japan have equally joined their voices to that of the multitude to call for the return of normalcy and the return of children to classes in the northwest and southwest region. One of the only Cameroonian to study in the Nagoya University in Japan, he has been talking to our reporter Charles Ebune. Amimbang Awah Martin, who has been in Japan for 4 years, is here being profiled for the 7:30 news by Charles Ebune, who is just back from Japan.
Emerging from an environmentally friendly locomotive on the streets of Japan's fourth most populated city, Nagoya, is this Cameroonian millennial, the only from 327 to be a student in Nagoya University.
I came in 2015 under the MEC scholarship program. It's a scholarship program provided by the Ministry of Education, Science, Sports and Technology.
Tasked with a passion for environmental protection, Amimbang Awah Martin has partially learned to be Japanese.
One thing that I appreciate very much about Japan is the hospitality. It's called omotenashi.
18 years ago, Martin and I were students in Government High School Boya, and today, regrettably notes, children are largely prevented from schooling in the northwest and southwest regions.
Any person will not be happy that children are not going to school.
A champion for Cameroon, Amimbang Awah Martin, has one message about the school blockade.
I don't feel happy because for any reasons, I don't think children's education should be hampered on.
And with books part of his meals now, Amimbang terribly misses Cameroon.
I miss that bond between my mother and my brothers and sisters very much. I also miss the food, you know.
The young researcher writes saying hello to you in Japanese, konnichiwa, because tomorrow in Japanese, ashita, is full of opportunities.
The Cameroonian military contingent that has been part of the United Nations multi-dimensional integrated mission in the Central African Republic, MINUSCA, is back in the country after a 12-month mission. The over 1,000 soldiers and gendarmes handed back the national flag to the defense base in a retrocession ceremony that took place at the 101 Military Air Base here in Yaoundé today. Kylian Dandifon reports.
750 soldiers and 280 gendarmes of the Cameroonian military have returned the flag with pride to the minister delegate at the presidency in charge of defense after 12 months as the 5th contingent under the United Nations multi-dimensional integrated stabilization mission MINUSCA in the Central African Republic.
I'm very glad to be back, home sweet home, because I went with all my personnel. I came back with all my personnel. Even there, I didn't break any material there.
The country has also appreciated their bravery in defending the national colors in an international mission.
These personnel, during their stay within the framework of this operation, completed their mission with honor and loyalty.
During the same ceremony, the keys to 157 vehicles were handed over to different military services.
The handing over of vehicles is in compliance with the implementation of the measures of the Head of State, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and aims not only to improve the working conditions of personnel, but also and above all to beef up the operational capabilities of our forces.
Minister Joseph Betia Somo, his close aides, and a cream of the military watch a military parade that crowned the event with visibly rapt attention.
Food safety, quality, availability and cost were on the spotlight at a joint press conference in Yaoundé today by the Minister of Agriculture as well as the Food and Agriculture Organization in Cameroon. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gabriel Mbairobe, and the FAO representative told media practitioners during the conference, which is holding ahead of the joint celebration of the World Food Safety Day and the World Food Day on October 16, 2019, that healthy feeding, a balanced diet, and affordable price are all steps towards a food-sufficient future. Beatrice Goom tells us more.
The quality and safety of food consumed by populations the world over falls short of standards, according to the Food and Agricultural Organization. Statistics from the Food and Agricultural Organization show that more than 600 million people are affected annually due to contaminated food, amongst other statistics.
Obesity and other forms of malnutrition currently affect nearly 1 in 3 people and will affect 1 in 2 people by the year 2027 if nothing is done. 820 million people are suffering from hunger.
To reduce the number of people who suffer from poor nutrition and to eradicate hunger by 2030 the world over, particularly in Cameroon, there is need to improve the feeding habits of the world's inhabitants. Populations have to be educated on the consumption of quality, balance, and affordable diet. 3 concerns the press has been called to convey to the populations by the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gabriel Mbairobe, flanked by the resident representative of the Food and Agricultural Organization, amongst other personalities. This was during a press conference that dwelled on the joint celebration of the World Food Safety and World Food Day that will be commemorated on October 16, 2019.
Act 3 of our running series on activities of the Douala Seaport focused tonight on efforts at modernizing the Douala-Bonaberi sector with a view of rendering it more attractive and competitive and a competitive hub in the Gulf of Guinea. Attention is now centered on the rehabilitation works at major entrances to the port and the construction of roads to link the companies operating within the port area. Leris Nani, a reporter, reports from Douala.
Ensuring fluidity of traffic inside the Douala-Bonaberi port facility is the objective of the ongoing road works by the top management of the Douala Port Authority to rehabilitate the CNIC Baza Earth stretch of road and the construction of the exit route to the timber terminal. The work started with the repairs of potholes and the cleaning of drainage systems. At the level of the Isenga stretch of road, houses of inhabitants residing in this part have been demolished to create space for ample roads and space for companies to build their warehouses, given that it is a swampy area not conducive for habitation. This is the same scenario at the level of the quay, which serves as the entry and exit point of all imported and exported goods in the country. Some 13 warehouses are equally under rehabilitation and construction. This project consists in optimizing the occupation of the harbour area at the scale of the port sector, as they will serve as storerooms for companies dealing with the loading and offloading of imported and exported goods. The process of standardization, renovation and development being implemented at the port of Douala-Bonaberi constitutes an integral part of the greater achievement of the President of the Republic.
We now take you now to Sangmelima, the headquarters of the Jar and Lubber Division of the South region, where reports say calm is gradually coming back to the city after some skirmishes days ago that led to vandalism and acts of looting by some youths, and the senior divisional officer of the Jah and Lobo has held a crisis meeting calling for calm at every quarters as some of the victims who were rather arrested following the skirmishes have all been released. We have details in this report from CRTV South.
The town of Sangmilima got up Thursday to fresh confrontations between natives and outsiders. The angry population mounted barricades across streets in the town, paralyzing all activities. The new wave of manifestations followed that Wednesday over the assassination of a commercial bike rider last weekend.
2 days ago, a corpse was found at Nyazanga. The name of the deceased is Mr. Assam Belinga Benjamin. He's age 27. We have a few issues in town between the communities, which made that this morning the population thought that it was a matter between the communities. And that is what in town we have, all we have had there.
Efforts Wednesday from administrative and security officials as well as elites of the locality calmed the population, which out of anger had destroyed 8 shops, injuring close to 10 individuals. South Governor was in Sangmilima this Thursday following the latest happenings for a security meeting to seek lasting peace.
Close to 8 people were part of the crime. Most of the people were not indigenous of the place. So the conflict has morphed into an inter-ethnic conflict. We receive reinforcement elements from Yaoundé and from Ebolova, and they are going to be deployed all over the town to bring back peace.
An intercommunal dialogue has been convened this Friday by the SGO for the Jah and Lobo to bring together heads of the different communities in the town, administrative and security authorities, as well as members of the elite to seek lasting peace.
We stay in the South region where efforts are being made to improve the management of merchandise at the Kribi Deep Sea Port. Freight forwarders, maritime transit agents and other stakeholders have been drilled on ways of ensuring the effective transit of goods at the port. The Director General of the Kribi Deep Sea Port, Patrice Melon, says the training aims at boosting performance at the Kribi Deep Sea Port. Bernice Atabon has details from Kribi.
The training that has taken place in the seaside resort of Kribi brought together transporters, shippers, maritime transit agents, freight forwarders, and other stakeholders of the Kribi Deep Sea Port.
The main objective of this session is to share and to disseminate best practices. And as we know, our willingness to transform Kribi as a main hub in the sub-region.
The Kribi port has been doing well in relation to the removal and delivery of goods.
At our port, if I want to compare with other ports without mentioning names, at our port we have a time frame of at 24 hours that you can actually pull out your container from the port, which means that before actually the vessel actually anchors, you start doing your documentary procedures, and before at the time that the vessel anchors, you have just about 2 hours to pull out your container.
In a bid to improve this performance and make the port cope with competition, the institution's system of managing merchandise has been reinforced through this training. According to the Director General of the Kribi Deep Sea Port, Patrice Melon, all stakeholders have to play a major role in ameliorating the port's performance. The Kribi Deep Sea Port aims at becoming a major port on the African continent, and that is why it is making efforts to update her stakeholders on the management of merchandise in view of meeting international standards.
Now onto this obituary page. The mortal remains of one-time Minister of Transport Albert Ngome, who died in Yaoundé on August 20, have been coffined at the mortuary of the Yaoundé Referral Hospital. The late statesman, who served in various capacities before his retirement, died at the age of 80. He will be laid to rest on Saturday, August 12, in his native Mpako in Tombal subdivision of the Southwest region. Raihanatu Sali reports.
He begins his journey to the land of no return. The late Albert Ngome Kome, former Minister of Transport from 1979 to 1984, died in Yaoundé last August 20, leaving behind 8 children.
My father, Albert, that we popularly called Django, was a very strict disciplinarian. He was very hard with anything you did wrong, but we knew that he was showing us his love.
The late statesman, before his retirement, served his country in various capacities. Before his appointment as minister, he was deputy director at the National Fund for Rural Development as well as FUNADE. He also served as board chair of the National Ports Authority, the National Shippers Council, and the Cameroon Railway Corporation. The late Albert Ngome Kome has been described as an example of a good patriot and a promoter of peace.
He taught us a lot about the values of love of country, sense of the state, respect for elders, and good behavior at all times. So I learned a lot from him.
He will be posthumously decorated on Friday, October 11, before being laid to rest on Saturday, October 12 in Pako, Tombel subdivision of the Southwest region.
Just how ready is Africa for its announced continental free trade area, and what input can the African Parliament bring to the project? The issue was under scrutiny today at the Pan-African Parliament, currently in session in Midrand, South Africa. The AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga, took to the rostrum detailing measures already taken to render the free trade area operational by 2020. Bo Bernard Fonkamuta reports from Midrand, South Africa.
Point by point, deadline to deadline, the AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga, detailed before the Pan-African Parliament measures taken to make the free trade area operational by July 1st, 2020.
The transport we have now, transport and communication facilities that we have, can carry trade, intra-African trade, worth about $1 trillion. It's not efficient, we need to improve on it. But with the development of this market, we are now coming up with the public-private partnerships to develop infrastructure across Africa.
As expected, this talking point clutched the attention of PAP members. In the general debate, they expressed concerns over production, transport, security, currency, and even the readiness of African economic powerhouses to embrace the free trade area.
42% of intra-African trade is in manufactured goods. So it's not correct that we are going to depend on commodities. 42% of intra-African trade is in manufactured goods. When we create a large market, we are giving incentives for increased manufacturing activity across Africa. So the market that we are generating is going to promote manufacturing and agro-processing.
This notwithstanding, the African Union has a plan that culminates in the dismantling of tariff barriers by July 1 next year, a date that henceforth will be observed as Africa Integration Day. Failure is not an option, and legislators have been invited to play their role to keep the train moving.
Now on to sports. The indomitable Lions of Cameroon have intensified training sessions in Rhodes in Tunisia ahead of their international friendly against the Carthage Eagles of that country on Saturday. So far, 3 players, Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting, Moum Ngamelu and Gaëtan Bom, have been ruled out of Saturday's game due to minor injuries. Baldwin Sama reports.
They train twice daily in Rhodes, Tunisia. Cameroon's indomitable Lions, after welcoming the new technical staff, train with the intentions of securing a victory this Saturday against the Carthage Eagles of Tunisia. 3 players have so far left the Lions' den, and they have been ruled out of Saturday's encounter due to minor injuries sustained. Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting, Moumi Ngamelu and Gaëtan Bong will watch their teammates play this Saturday from home. The different players in camp are psychologically ready, with emphasis during their respective training sessions laid on effective ball control and how to create scoring opportunities. Given that it will be their first match with the new coaches, the Lions in camp show some signs of discipline and determination to keep a clean sheet against Tunisia. This Friday, the team continues training with corrections to be given to some mistakes noticed.
The primetime news on the CLTV, that's the way it was for today and for the week. Thanks, and see you on Monday.